Okay, when it comes to feminism, which is a subject I cover quite a lot in my videos, sometimes I'm torn between talking about contentious issues and sort of reflecting on, well, is this only going to give them more airtime? And my conclusion is, well, they're going to get airtime anyway, and it's important that there are counter views. So I've seen two examples today of yet another I've seen two examples of what I would say really highlights just how utterly pathetic Western feminism has become. The first one is a campaign by, I think it's called FCKH8.com, something like that. Apologies, I don't know the exact group that's responsible, but basically it's a feminist campaign, and what they're doing is getting little girls. None of these kids can be older than 8 years old. They're dressed up like Disney princesses, and they're getting them to basically, first few seconds they're like, oh, I'm pretty, I'm nice, and then they drop F-bombs, and it's like, you think I'm effing this, I'm effing that. What do you find more offensive, a little girl swearing, or and then they go into the usual feminist rants about pay inequality and so on. Well, firstly, I do think it is inappropriate for children to swear. I don't think there's anything cute or cool about that, although that is not actually the main issue here. I'm not so much offended by that as I am by these obnoxious feminists using children in that way. I think that is utterly shameful. That adult women would use and exploit children in this sort of way. These little girls are far too young to really develop, whether they agree with feminism or not, any ideas. When they're in their teens, whatever, then they can develop views on it, but not at that age. At that age they should be enjoying their childhood. So for feminists to exploit children in that way is frankly shameful. And I would say that by the way of any campaign. I don't think adults should use children to make political points, and this is a political campaign, let's be clear about that. It's not about women's rights, it's not about human rights. It's a political campaign by obnoxious, pathetic feminists to try and continue the war on men. So that's one thing. The other thing I read about, it was originally in The Guardian, which is a feminist newspaper, but it's been reported in other newspapers as well. Apparently David Cameron, the Prime Minister, has refused to wear a t-shirt saying this is what a feminist looks like. Now, it's not often I praise David Cameron, but on this occasion I say well done, Mr. Prime Minister, for standing up to these feminist bullies. And it's from a group called LUK. Well, that's, as far as I know, that's a fashion magazine, but they've launched a campaign to try and get the Prime Minister to wear the t-shirt saying this is what a feminist looks like. L's editor-in-chief, this from the Daily Mail, Lorraine Candy said, we asked the Prime Minister 5 times if he would wear the Fawcett Society's iconic this is what a feminist looks like slogan t-shirt and send us a snapshot. It would only take 10 minutes. 5 times he declined. Well done, David Cameron. On other issues, Cameron's got it wrong by not, for example, paying attention to fathers' rights and so on. But on this issue, he's finally done the right thing regarding feminism. And I'm pleased he has. Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband have, of course, caved into the campaign, and they've been wearing t-shirts. Now, just to be clear, if that is genuinely their personal view, okay, that's their personal view. If Mr. Miliband sees himself as a feminist, fine. If Mr. Clegg sees himself as a feminist, fine. But Clegg, frankly, is one of the least honest men in Parliament, and has that reputation. Nick Clegg, actually, I had respected his position on gender issues, because he had, for example, condemned women-only conferences, and he had actually made some rather progressive statements regarding gender issues. So for him to cave into this campaign, well, Ed Miliband I'm not so surprised about, because he heads a party that has long pandered to feminism. I'm pleased that David Cameron has said no, and to me this just demonstrates one thing. 5 times. Now that just shows how arrogant the feminist movement is. Why should the Prime Minister have to wear a t-shirt sporting your slogan. Why? Why should he be coerced into doing that? It's not about a particular policy or a bill that you're asking the Prime Minister to pass, which would be different. This is about asking him to advocate a movement that polarises many people. Maybe Cameron has finally realised that feminism is a divisive movement, and if he wore that t-shirt, then he would just be endorsing a divisive movement. So I'm pleased that he's rejected it, and it shows how utterly arrogant feminists are, that they asked him 5 times. Now, there's many people out there who I'm sure would like the Prime Minister to do many things on many subjects, but 5 times, talking about not taking no for an answer, but that's just typical of feminism, isn't it, really? The fact that they cannot tolerate any dissenting views. The reason isn't given as to why Mr. Cameron refused it, but according to the Daily Mail it just says that he is uncomfortable with it. Well, that's good. I'm uncomfortable calling myself a feminist. No, I'm sincere, I'm not a feminist. But actually, there is a little article here. Last year he was asked by the women's magazine Red whether he was a feminist. He paused before replying, "I don't know what I'd call myself. It's up to others to attach labels. But I believe men and women should be treated equally." That's a pretty good answer, except for the bit about others attaching labels. I don't think anyone should attach labels to others unless it's clear that that person is that way. Mr. Miliband, meanwhile, backed the campaign, saying feminism means a better word for all of us and a battle yet to be won. No, Mr. Miliband, it doesn't. It means female privilege. That's what feminism means. So these two things are just an example of how utterly pathetic Western feminism is. Instead of making the Prime Minister wear a pro-feminist slogan and getting little girls to swear to drive an adult's campaign, why don't you actually do something productive, like dealing with actual human rights violations against women? I don't know, why don't you start with acid attacks against women in Pakistan? Then you might have something to talk about. But until then, you just look like petulant brats who really aren't interested in equality, but have every interest in pushing divisive, petty, childish campaigns that really don't seem to make a great deal of sense. I mean, what does getting little girls to swear really achieve? What does it achieve? It's utterly pathetic. And I do believe that it's not so much that the little girls are swearing, although I do think that's inappropriate, but for me the much greater problem lies in the fact that these little girls are being used. And it may well be that some of those little girls grow up and feel quite angry about that. I don't know. Maybe they'll grow up to be feminists, maybe they won't. But either way, it's wrong. And I would say that about any campaign using children.